Greetings, Peralta. This is Joel Laguerre, Chancellor. I am very happy to be able to share with you a shortened version of the open forum that I held at the colleges and in the district office during the fall semester. So this would be a shortened version of that, where I'll talk about our overall vision, some of the changes in the district office, some of the partnerships and both local and international. We'll give you a brief overview of the budget, talk about some of the challenges and some of the things that the Chancellor is looking at, and kind of rephrasing things in general. So in terms of the overall vision, if I could capture that in one word, it would be financial. Really, financial base, a strong financial base for Peralta is very necessary. And we need to do that because we cannot depend a lot on what is happening in Sacramento. We need to be more independent of Sacramento because of the many challenges that we have with the changes in the economy. So it is important for us to build a strong reserve for the future and build the reserve in a way that does not really affect our general fund. And we need to enhance our academic mission because if we don't, getting a strong financial base is going to be very difficult. And when I talk about academic mission, I'm talking both about career technical education as well as general education or liberal arts. And we also need to make sure that we provide better services for our students. So some of the changes that you'll hear about were made so that we can really address some of these issues. We need to make sure that we augment access to college and success also for our students as well as the funding for them. We need to own the educational needs of the community because the Peralta community, the 6 cities that support us, really depend on us for meeting the educational needs of the citizens in the area. That's something we need to take very seriously, whether it is to provide access to certificates, AAS. We need to do that, but also when it comes to the potential to offer bachelor's degrees when the state opens that up, we need to take that as part of our mission, part of our dream, part of our vision, what really needs to drive us. And it's also important for us to advocate for more resources through government. And when I say government, I mean local, state, and national government. So I want to share with you one of the areas where I feel that and I know that it is possible, is to do workforce development continuing education. With this particular unit, what we will do is to do a lot of contract training, as well as be able to provide non-credit, access to non-credits for a lot of our citizens, some who may think that they cannot come to college, some who may not be eligible for the regular college, to be able to provide for them, both from an access standpoint, but also from an infrastructure standpoint. Access to non-credit is really, really critical for us. And having a unit that pays attention to that alone, I think is really very important. So we also have some citizens in our area that are underemployed. And so it's important for us to really provide opportunities for these folks to be able to access non-credit courses, as well as credit courses as well, but a special outreach to the underemployed so that they can develop themselves is really important. We also want to make sure that we have enough funding, enough revenue to support the district strategically, because there are many things that we want to do that we are not able to do. It's like we're always struggling to be able to do certain things. For example, our professional development is an area where we have not done really well. Faculty development is another area where we have had some funding, and the funding had remained pretty stagnant for many, many years. I would say at least a couple of decades, until recently I increased the funding by 50%. But that's not the way that we should do it. We should really have a whole lot more. But in order for us to do that, we have to find the means to do it. And this workforce development continuing education will provide us with that opportunity to be able to do it. We also have a lot of adults in our area that need to complete their education so that they can change the route that they're following, so they can change the path that they're following, so that they can have more secure employment that pays a whole lot more. Because, as you know, for our area, the cost of living is very expensive, and if we're going to maintain some of these residents in our community, it's important for them to get the education they need. I want for that this workforce development and continuing education to be a security blanket for us during hard times. What I mean by that, it's a unit that can have very strong reserve. And when you have that kind of strong reserve, when Sacramento cuts our budget, we don't have to cut our classes. We don't have to lay off faculty. We don't have to lay off staff. If we have that kind of reserve to replenish, to replace what we lose from Sacramento. The reason why it is important is because when we cut our classes, it is very hard to put them back. Because the students we lose when we cut classes a lot of times do not return. So it is really important for us to have the strong financial backing to be able to do that. And also this is based on social justice, which is providing opportunities for people who have been deprived, who have not had the opportunity to really access our colleges, because we have really great educational opportunities for our citizens. There is no reason for our programs not to have the high enrollment that they need to have. And so this workforce development continuing education will help us with that. Enrollment management is an area, as well as student services, where we really need to improve. As I mentioned earlier, we need to improve our services to our students. So in our case, we have some of our colleges do pretty well with managing enrollment. In this case, particularly where I feel that we need to make effort is in outreach and recruitment. We just have given up, or we just have not put the emphasis enough on outreach and recruitment. And when we don't, other colleges are coming into our area to do the outreach and recruitment. And so when we see that we have a decrease in enrollment, a lot of times it's not because students don't want to come, it's because we have not invited them to come. We have currently in our system about 6,800 students who have applied to one of the Peralta colleges and who have not been able to access the education that they need because we have not done the proper outreach to them. So with enrollment management, that's something that I know is important for us to do. Also, it is important to remember that our budget is based on our enrollment. For each full-time equivalent students, we have $5,000 that the state gives us. So it doesn't take a lot for us to increase our budget if we increase our enrollment. And this time during this time, following the tough economic times, the state is providing additional support, additional funding for us to teach more students. However, we are not taking advantage of that. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we put the emphasis on enrollment management, and that's why I took one of the positions that had existed before and changed it into an enrollment management administrator so that we can put the emphasis on the enrollment, because as goes our enrollment, so goes our budget. So it is really, really important for us to do. We also when our budget really improves, our enrollment improves, our budget improves, it provides job security for our employees. degrees. And that's something that's really important to me. It's important not only for the part-time and tenure track, but also for some of our classified staff. It's also important for us to make sure that we provide that security, because when we have job security for our folks, they're going to be happier, they're going to feel better about themselves, and therefore they're going to serve our students better. And that's one way for us to be one of the best community college districts in the nation, is when we provide that security. So again, the theme, the overall vision is really strong financial security, strong financial basis for Peralta Community College District. And that doesn't come just by itself. You just don't say it and then it happens. You have to work at it. And we have at least two really strong ways that we can do that. Is the workforce development continuing education that I spoke about earlier, the non-credit, and by taking care of our enrollment that's going to happen really well. In student services, we have some good things that happen at our colleges. But as a district, we are not coordinated from a student services perspective. The reason why it is important that we coordinate our efforts is that many of our students, I believe the number can be as high as 40% of our students, take classes at two or more of our colleges. So for student services, it is important that we have these services coordinated among the colleges, and that's the reason why I wanted for us to have a vice chancellor of student services, so that that person can really be in charge of making sure that the services throughout the district are well coordinated, because our students attend more than one college, and it's important for them to really have similar services. That doesn't have to be the same thing, exactly the same thing, but they need to be similar so that they don't get lost when they go from one college to another. And then I think that from student services perspective, the overall system needs some work, and that's why we have the vice chancellor for student services among us. So that is really in terms of support that we need to provide for our students. So we often talk about our colleges not being coordinated enough, working well together. One of the reasons is to have our academic departments, our faculty, to be working hand in hand. To make that happen, we cannot just leave it to chance for it to happen by itself, and that's why I established the unit called Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. And with that, we have a Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs that can really put our academic programs together, that can synchronize the services, synchronize the offerings, synchronize the schedules, so that our students, because again, they're going all over the place, they can find the schedule that they need, so that they can graduate in time, which is another thing for us to do. The success of our students is really, really important to us. And collaboration among the colleges. So if we're teaching chemistry at Merritt College, and we're teaching the same thing at BCC, how do we work together to make sure that they are coordinated, so that if a student cannot find the course that he needs at BCC, he knows that at Merritt he has a chance to do that, or at Laney, or at COA. The Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs can help us with all of that. And it's also important for us to support innovation for all of our faculty. So the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs can make all of that happen. And then an area that's really important that I know we have neglected is distance education. Distance education really started by a few of our faculty members. It has been really their efforts. And as a system, as a district, we have not provided the kind of support that they need. Luckily, for this academic year, for this fiscal year, we provided additional funding for things to happen. However, we have not had the leadership, the district-wide leadership, to make it happen. Again, it's a matter of coordinating everything that we do. And so that's really a big part of what the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs is doing for us. So I want to share with you some of the changes that happened in the district. And I think it's important to really pay close attention to that. The Workforce Development and Continuing Education Associate Vice Chancellor, not a Vice Chancellor, but an Associate Vice Chancellor, is a replacement for our legal counsel. So our legal counsel would no longer have a general counsel that is full-time with us. So I took that position and replaced that with the Workforce Development and Continuing Education Associate Dean. The SEM stands for Strategic Enrollment Management. This is a position that used to be Dean of Equity. So we changed that position from Dean of Equity to Dean of Enrollment Management. However, the Academic Senate last year encouraged me to differentiate between the titles in the district and the titles at the colleges. So that's the reason why we have an assistant vice chancellor as opposed to a dean of enrollment management. Again, an assistant vice chancellor, not a vice chancellor, and that is the equivalent of a dean. And then in student services, we had lost our associate dean of student services. There used to be a vice chancellor of student services. We just reinstated that position. So it wasn't, although for last year, the funding or the compensation was lower than what it is this year, but it was a position that that had already existed in the system that we put forth. And then in academic affairs, we really have changed education services into academic affairs, and then use the education services to provide support for distance education. Again, distance education is a program that we really had neglected. We had not provided strong leadership for that, and because of the changes that are happening, I believe, especially for this year, that and ongoing, that it was really, really important for us to have someone dedicated to provide support and leadership for the distance education program. So that's what happened with that particular change. Now, I mentioned earlier that it was important for us to have resources, seek resources from the federal government, as well as the city government, as well as the county government, to really have cooperation with them. So that's why I established this advocacy position, which is an executive vice chancellor for strategic partnerships as well as advancement. So in that, we want to make sure that we work very closely with our cities, working very closely with the state, as well as the county and the federal government to get what support that we need. A lot of colleges and universities depend a lot on grants and special allocations from different governments to be able to do, but to be able to do work and meet needs of students. It doesn't happen by itself. You really need to have the focus. You really need to have someone who's really working on that for you. So if it goes really well, that person at the end of the day provides more than what the person's salary is going to be for that. So it is really important for us to work on legislations that will benefit the district. These are active steps that we need to take in order to make our district better. Again, financial security. And for example, we just worked, we got involved with a bond campaign that the County of Alameda was running for housing. And because we're involved in that, we're expecting that our students will benefit from that. But it needs, we need that advocacy in order to make it happen. In terms of budget, our budget is decent. It's not, the state has really done a lot of good things for us. However, I must tell you that because our enrollment is not where it needs to be, we could have been paid for 2,000 more FTEs. If you take 2,000 FTEs, you time it by the number that you see on the screen, 4,500, is actually more like 5,000. If you take 2,000, you time it by 5,000, just imagine how much more money we would have and how much more we could take care of the needs that we have in the county, so in the district, sorry. So that's the reason why really strategic enrollment management is very necessary. So it's not really an expenditure, it's rather an investment in what we need to do. In order for things to work well, we also need to have our academic programs working really well. So having a Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs who can make that happen is really important. If we don't provide the best services for our students, they're not going to stay. They're not going to encourage other students to come. So having coordinating student services is really important. And then workforce development and continuing education. I've already talked about that quite a bit. It is really a game changer for us. We could expect the 2,000 FTEs to really be made up by the workforce development continuing education over time. It's not going to happen right away, but over time that should happen, because it's not a unit that will take away from what we are currently doing, but rather expand what we need to do. Expanding what we do in the community is something that I'm very much committed to. That's something that our community needs. That's something that a lot of our citizens need. So it's really important. So our enrollment and our budget are really tied together. So it's important for us to make sure that as we look at our budget, as we make demands for additional resources, we also look at, okay, how can we generate the revenue to make that happen? So for our vision to summarize a little bit, funding is important. Earning our way to economic prosperity is really important. We can do that in a sustainable way, in a practical way, in an ethical way, to have the revenue sources that, to use the revenue sources that are available to all community colleges, not only in California, but throughout the nation. The strategies that I'm sharing with you are not new. There are things that are done all over the country and in several community college districts in the state. We need to take City College of San Francisco, just next to us, has a lot of these same things that I'm talking to you about. So we really need to make sure that we have housing for our students. That's part of social justice, because we have a lot of students who are homeless. And in order for them to get out of the homelessness that they need our support to make things happen. So through the strategies that I've shared with you, whether it's government advocacy, whether it is workforce development, continuing education, that can happen. So it's really important for us to do that. It is really up to us to help our students or our citizens who have been looking at economic prosperity at a distance. Many generations of them, their families, etc., have looked at economic prosperity from the other side of the fence. We, Peralta Community College District, have what it takes for us to help our students meet their financial needs, get the dreams that they have to become better citizens, more productive citizens, accomplished by providing the access that we can provide for them. In terms of titles, comparison between colleges and district, you see them here. We have presidents at the colleges. In the district, we have vice chancellors. We have vice president or associate vice presidents at the colleges. We have associate vice chancellor at the district level. We have deans at the colleges. We have assistant vice chancellors at the district level. And then the directors and associate directors, they share the same kind of title. So I share that with you so that when somebody says that we have a certain number of vice chancellors, so that you can be well educated that there is indeed a comparison between the colleges and the district, and that everybody who has a title of vice chancellor is not, who has vice chancellor in his or her title is not necessarily a vice chancellor. It's important for us to be well educated about that, so that we are an education entity, it's good for us to know what we're talking about and educate the public as well. So in terms of the changes, we really have the academic affairs. That is a reassigned funding position. The student affairs is also a reassigned position that we have. Finance and administration, there has not been any change there. General services, no change except that the duties for both finance and administration and general services, there have been some changes. Human resources, no changes, just have taken on some additional duties. The educational services, that's what I am using for the distance education. Distance education is not, again, it's an area we can expand in. Expanding in distance education will allow us to have more enrollment. All of the increases in enrollment in the state, a lot of them, probably not all of them, but a lot of them is really happening within non-credit and distance education. So for us to increase our enrollment, this is really a good move for us to make, and partnership and advancement for us to get in the play, for us to get really in the movement of having greater support from government. That's really necessary, and that's a position we expect will be able to bring in its own salary over time. So we have the Associate Vice Chancellor. This position for workforce development and continuing education is one that I shared with you earlier, that we placed the General Counsel. I made it an interim position. The position was established and made it interim because we didn't have time to do a full search during the summer because faculty and staff were not available. So we'll open that for search later on. And this is, again, a position that has replaced our General Counsel position. The Assistant Vice Chancellor is a position, again, that had existed before, and we changed the dean to assistant vice chancellor without increasing the salary. So it's important to know that as well. And so it's not really a new position that we have. And again, because of the timing of the recruitment for that, we have it as an interim position, expecting to do the recruitment during the spring semester, or as soon as we possibly can. Also, for those two positions, there was one thing that I feel that I should have done, which was to involve more people in the recruitment. I did not, and because those two positions didn't really have constituents, but I think over time that's something that we will do. Again, to summarize, finance, no change. Human resources, no change. The general services, no change. Academic affairs is really no change there, but funded through the funding that we had for Ed Services. Ed Services is a new investment that we are making in continuing in distance education, and partnership advancement is something that we expect will be self-funded over time. And student services is really a position that we have reallocated, and workforce development continuing education was what General Counsel was, and then enrollment management was the position we had as Dean of Equity. So that's some summarization of the different positions that we have in the district. I want to thank you for listening. As I shared during the fall speech, I'm always open to answer questions that anyone has about what's happening in the district. I'm also very open to hear feedback, listen to criticism, because at the end of the day, both you and I want a better Peralta Community College District. We want a transformed Peralta Community College District. We want a Peralta Community College District that is financially very secure, whereby we're not just meeting the basic needs that we have, but we can go above and beyond so that we can be excellent. We will not be excellent if we do not have the financial means to get us there. We're not going to be excellent if we go year and years without giving raises to our faculty and to our staff. It is very important for us to ensure a strong financial base for Peralta, because we have a very strong academic foundation, and I think if we build a strong financial foundation on it, we are going to be a great community college district. Thank you for listening.